Welcome to Extended Cuts with Down and Nerdy on YouTube. I'm James Witham, and I just realized we never got to talk on the podcast about the name, finally the name of the Man of Steel sequel, but of course it's just a Justice League prequel at this point, right? Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. Now, the first thing I've got a problem with is that the versus thing. I think you got to drop it at this point. I mean, I know they probably won't because, hey, Warner Brothers and DC is just going to listen to me because I said so. I don't understand why you've got to do it that way. I think any comic book fan would be okay with Batman / Superman, which we're doing in the comics now, or Superman, Batman, and then the world's finest title. Even Kevin Smith talked about this on his podcast. I think that as comic book fans, we'd love to see the world's finest title actually on there, but it's never going to happen. And why is it never going to happen? Because we also have to think about the mainstream movie-going public who has no idea what World's Finest is. Now, yes, I really think that these are comic book movies and they should be made for comic book fans, but at the same time, we have to be careful because these films need to make money. It needs to be obvious. Yes, Batman, Superman being in the title should be enough, but World's Finest to a random non-comic book fan is going to be very odd. They're not going to get it, and Dawn of Justice just is basically the way of throwing it right in your face and making it obvious that, hey, our next movie is going to be a Justice League movie. So I understand why they did it. I'm not too thrilled about it, but I also want to talk about some comments that Kevin Smith made about what DC is going to do with their universe and how they're going to make it different. And almost I don't want to quote him directly, but I'm paraphrasing here. It almost makes it seem like he thinks that they're going to build the universe through Justice League movies. Now, it's very interesting. Is it possible that we could see a Justice League movie where they mainly focus on a couple of the characters, but also bring in the entire Justice League? And do we need origins for all of these characters? Because if we're smart enough to think that Batman, Superman, World's Finest would be a good title for comic book movie fans, shouldn't we also be smart enough to know that, hey, we know these origins. We don't need them. So if your one argument is that it shouldn't be Batman versus Superman because we don't need to pander to the general public, we shouldn't need origin stories to pander to the general public either. So, well, I would personally love to see origin story movies for some of these characters. I don't know that you necessarily need to do it that way. And if you want to build just a bunch of Justice League movies where you focus on different characters at a time, that could actually work depending on the storylines that they want to do. And think about the villains you would get if you do it that way. It opens the door for any possible villains to be in Justice League movies. And we also have to consider that at the end of the day, and I know that Nick and I have mentioned this on the podcast before, we could be talking about the fact that these characters could all be tied in from the TV universe. We could see Stephen Amell's Arrow be tied in. We could also see The Flash get tied in. For all we know, Grant Gustin's going to play The Flash in Justice League movies as well. Maybe Constantine. I know they're on different networks, but you never know how they can connect these universes. So what would you like to see, and do you have a problem with the Justice League movie title? Do you like the fact that DC might just, according to Kevin Smith and what his opinions are, might just do Justice League movies and focus on a couple characters at a time? Let us know your comments, and always check out weekly episodes of our podcast every week at facebook.com/downandnerdy. This has been Extended Cuts.